Now I really want to go into the details and define of what are the different types of controls. This is important because it kind of just helps you categorize, the different types, and just maybe it's also important when you brainstorm, you think about the different elements. So on the whole, we have three different types of internal controls. We have detective controls, we have preventive controls, and we have corrective controls. Now, let's go into the first bucket. So detective control, and I've shown here a time limit, or sorry, a timeline. Here you have the operational process, and here you have a control that kicks in. So the control comes after the fact. It's called ex post control, and it basically makes sure that somebody looks and monitors and checks what has been going on in a process and identifies any outliers. So a detective control is basically identify an error, but before they actually escalate. So when one error happens, you should actually pick it up. If the same error happens tomorrow, you should also have the control, and latest by the second or third day, some alarm bells should ring and should escalate this to the appropriate management level. So somebody actually takes a look and checks what is going on in this process. So an example of a detective control is like an ex post control report, physical inventory, and reconciliation. So reconciliation is the best example of a detective control, because you can only do it like a bank account reconciliation. You compare your bank account statement against your general ledger balance, and you can only do it either after the end of the day, if you do a daily reconciliation, or if you do a monthly after month end closing of your financial statements. So this is an ex post, which is good. I'm not saying it's bad. So it just gives you here some more examples of an ex post control and audit trail. If I want to check if one person has to enter a transaction, a second person approves it. And if I go back and I want to detect any outliers, then obviously I need a report that tells me this transaction was processed and approved by whom. So it's kind of metadata that sits in the back of a system. And I need a control report that kind of shows me who has entered and approved a transaction. This is an audit trail. Another example is like employee background checks. You also do this. You hire somebody and then actually you detect that somebody you've hired or you are in the process of hiring, you actually see that, this person has a good or bad background story and credential story. Then periodic physical inventory is also after the fact. You detect that during the year you've actually lost some items and you have a shrinkage in your inventory level. So you detect it after the fact. Exception reports after the fact. Surveillance cameras, if you want to make sure unauthorized people enter a physical, let's say a room or an office building, and you actually implement access monitoring, surveillance cameras, then you actually detect somebody that has entered the building yesterday, but it's after the fact. So it's not as good as a preventive control, which I would like to move on now. Preventive control is something that is before. So you have an operational process and the control kicks in before the process happens. So it's a proactive measure, and it's actually aims to avert, to make an undesirable event, impossible. It prevents an event from happening. And that's the key. That's why preventive controls should be given priority over detective control. A preventive control is usually anything that is implemented in a system. It's a system-based control that actually prevents the process from actually progressing to the next stage or next level. If I put in a threshold, I'm not allowed to enter transaction above 1 million. Then I can implement this control in the system. So if I enter this amount, the system will actually prevent me from actually confirming this transaction and prevents this transaction from being processed along the process chain. So this is a very good control. It actually prevents something from happening. What are the other examples? Very good is access control. It can be physical or logical access to, can be access to a system. So I only, allow certain people to access this system. So I restrict, I define roles and responsibilities and permission in the, IT system. The same is true of access to a physical system. I give out key cards, and only people, owning key cards can actually access the building. The same is true any kind of policies and procedures and segregation of duties. I basically tell one person and I implement this control. So one person is allowed to enter a transaction, a second person is allowed to or has to approve a transaction before it's being processed. Data encryption is a very good example of a preventive control. I exchange information via email, but I make sure that there is a data encryption with this particular counterparty, so nobody can read the emails which we exchange. There is one element I would just like to highlight. As I mentioned before, preventive control should be given a priority over detective control. And that not only has to do with the fact that preventive control prevents something from happening, but it's also the nature of preventive control. They're very much system-based. So when you want to make something impossible to happen, you basically already include it and embed it in your system infrastructure. So it's usually something, if you just want to have somebody transact only transactions with specific counterparties, then you actually use a default in the system menu. So to enter this customer you're supposed to have transactions with is only restricted to the circle of customers this particular individual has access or is authorized to do. So you use default settings in or drop-down menus in a system to actually restrict the choice of counterparty to enter the transaction. So this is an example, and this talks very much for and is actually a very good selling argument for automatic controls or system embedded controls. As I mentioned before, a lot of organizations tend to implement controls that are manual, that involve time of people or staff involved, which you have to pay. So it's very expensive in the end, and it's important to actually implement something that is maybe takes a little bit more time to refine. That's important. So when you implement a system embedded control, it takes time to implement this, to develop. But once you've implemented it, it's robust, and you don't need any extra headcount or personnel to run it. So this is just an argument. It just helps you define the controls that are ideal. So ideally controls are preventive by nature. They're as much as automated as possible. So you shift these controls to the system to make it system embedded. And you also make sure that if you actually if you actually breach some of these limits which you have already implemented, which prevent anybody from any negative risk event, you just make sure that this is also escalated, that is part of a monitoring report or any kind of cancellations or amendments. They're all system enforced. You have a two-step approval system. Somebody cancels a transaction, a second person approves it. But here it's important that the system actually signals something going wrong or escalates it to the right approval person or approval step. So there are so many advantages of using preventive and system-based controls. This is so important. So these are all preventive controls, which are very good and very effective. And finally, we have corrective controls. Corrective controls are a little bit a consequence of a detective control. It basically addresses deficiencies identified by detective controls, and it actually includes training processes and updating policies. So if I mentioned this example of a exception report. Somebody reviews exception reports on a daily basis. It identifies outliers on a daily basis. I would expect somebody to go in, then take a deeper look into what's going on, talk to the various stakeholders, and then also set a kind of action or set kind of consequences. So if somebody repeatedly exceeds a threshold, and if he does it deliberately, then there should be some consequences. Should be disciplinary measures, could be different sorts of measures, but this needs to be, escalated, and there should be some kind of legal action maybe against the person if it's very harsh. So these are the corrective controls. So you step in, and then maybe there is something wrong with the system. Maybe there is a system bug. Then you actually have to change the system, so it no longer produces these outliers. So typical examples of corrective actions are bug fixes, system patching and updates, for instance. But there could also be like legal action, could be training. You maybe have to ensure people are trained better, so this mistake doesn't happen again. Maybe it needs more training and cross-training. Maybe you have to change the process. It requires some process redesign because the unit that currently does this activity is not trained, and some other unit would have the skill set to do it in a much more efficient way. So these are just examples of corrective action and corrective controls to be taken. Now I would like to come up with some practical examples of controls. So a procurement software is changed to cater for a control weakness identified by external auditors. So somebody has actually found some software that is not working. Yeah, it's a software patch, and therefore it's an example of a corrective control. You have travel expenses that need to be signed by the line manager. So it's a segregation of duties principle. One person kind of incurs the expenses, the second person kind of approves, and the second person being the line manager. So in this case, it's actually a segregation of duties, and that's a form of preventive control. The next example is exception reports, which are generated to identify these unusually high expenses. And this is an example of a detective control. So it's actually after the fact. Exception reports are always after the fact, ex post. Then we have access to sensitive office space, which you protect by use of key cards. So you prevent somebody from entering. It's a preventive control. And finally, you do a reconciliation. We said reconciliation is always after the fact. It's always detective. You reconcile your bank accounts against your general ledger to detect any unauthorized expenses, and that's referred to as detective control.
Did you like the video? Why not take it further and earn CPEs for free? Getting started is easy. Just click the link to the free on-demand course below. You'll be taken straight to the page where you can enroll. Once enrolled, watch the video, review the presentation slides, answer a set of questions, and your CPE certificate will land directly in your inbox. But wait, there's more. Prefer live learning? We host weekly live webinars packed with insights from seasoned professionals covering hot topics in governance, internal controls, risk management, audit, and compliance. It's your chance to engage in real-time discussions, ask questions, and sharpen your skills in key areas. Want to stay in the loop? Subscribe to our weekly newsletter using the link below to get updates on upcoming webinars straight to your inbox. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our new videos and offerings. Did you like the video? Why not take it further and earn CPEs for free? Getting started is easy. Just click the link to the free on-demand course below. You'll be taken straight to the page where you can enroll. Once enrolled, watch the video, review the presentation slides, answer a set of questions, and your CPE certificate will land directly in your inbox. But wait, there's more. Prefer live learning? We host weekly live webinars packed with insights from seasoned professionals covering hot topics in governance, internal controls, risk management, audit, and compliance. It's your chance to engage in real-time discussions, ask questions, and sharpen your skills in key areas. Want to stay in the loop? Subscribe to our weekly newsletter using the link below to get updates on upcoming webinars straight to your inbox. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our new videos and offerings.